Jamie, I read your recent op-ed. I have it here. The West needs America's leadership.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. As expected, you talked about the regulatory environment, but you also talked about increasing military spending, getting back to focusing on economic growth, develop a Marshall Plan for the energy industry and food security, restructure global trade, deal with China thoughtfully and without fear. So if I didn't know you for so long, I would think that maybe you're running for something with this op-ed.
Yeah.
Are you looking to run for public office?
First of all, I wrote that because I think we need all those things for another century of American leadership. And I also make the point that America has to lead for Americans. If we get these things wrong, particularly growth and global diplomacy, et cetera, it would be bad for all American citizens. And I think we could have been growing at 3% a year. And I point out in there that would have added 15,000 per person over 20 years. We've grown at 3% versus 1.7. So no, I'm not running for president. I just think it's important we support rational and comprehensive policies.
Well, a few years ago, you said that you could beat Trump. Do you still think you could beat Trump?
I'm not going to answer that question. I don't think there's a path for me to become president. So
okay. What about the Treasury Secretary? We understand Janet Yellen is on her way out. Have you spoken to the White House about taking that job?
I've not spoken to anyone about that job.
Would you want that job?
I am very happy where I am.
You're the only CEO who has seen and witnessed and participated in and led us out of three major booms and busts: the dot-com boom, dot-com bust, housing boom, housing bust, the regulatory aftermath. What do you learn from those things, and what does that tell you about where we are today?
Yeah. I don't know what you learn. Sometimes those lessons I say is what you relearn. But in terms of business, we're here for customers, So to me, when I talk about Fortune's balance sheet and technology and billions, because I want to serve you, including Fox, and through thick or thin. I don't always know what the future is, so if I'm prepared for it, I can grow my company through thick or thin. And of course, my financial results will bounce around. And so in terms of crisis, it's having the Army to fight it beforehand, proper margins, proper accounting, and then when they happen, you better move very quickly and kind of do the right thing. So, but the best example, you're saying, how resilient the country is. And if you go back every decade, back to 1900, it's been bigger the decade after. And that included World War I, World War II. So the terrible things, the resiliency of the system is unbelievable. It's the type of thing that Warren Buffett refers to. It doesn't go backwards. It may stop going forward sometimes, but it's always growing and innovating. And part of it is this enormously prosperous economy, which we need to make sure we keep prosperous. We don't, cripple it with bad policy.
So what should the new Congress be focused on? What is your opinion of the new Congress, 118th Congress now in place, ready to get to work? What should their priorities be?
Competent policy. I mean, we need competent policy. And, I'm not the type that, whether it's a Democrat or Republican, and I want them both to succeed. I'm a patriot. I want my political leaders to succeed, but we need very competent policy, which we have not always had in education, healthcare. So we have some of the best in the world. We have some of the worst in the world, lack of transparency. We spend too much money. We have too many sick people who, could be helped with wellness programs. I think we need infrastructure, so we started that. I think that's a very good thing if we spend that $1 trillion right. I think the IRA, we have to spend the money right. Immigration, we need an immigration policy. We need to stop illegal immigration. We need more legal immigration. And then I would have a heart for DACA and things like that. So if we do those things right, we're going to grow at 3%. And that also then pays for better safety nets for people. It pays for a stronger military. It makes America wealthier, and you can lift up people with jobs that have benefits and dignity and growth potential. And they start that job, they can climb the ladder after that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a fight right now in Washington right off the bat on defense spending because of this promise to go back to 22 levels. Are you supporting anybody yet for 2024 presidential election?
I am not.
Let me get your take on some of the policies out of this administration, and that is ESG. And that is this pressure that the financial services companies have been put under to stop lending to fossil fuel companies. Yeah. You were asked about it. You were questioned on it during your testimony by the House Financial Services Committee. Here's what you said.
Please answer with a simple yes or no. Does your bank have a policy against funding new oil and gas products? Mr. Dimon.
Absolutely not, and that would be the road to hell for America.
What did you mean?
You need secure, and Ukraine has pointed this out, we need secure, reliable energy, food, and not just us, every country. And when gas prices and oil were too high, all that happened is coal plants were being turned on. CO2 got worse, countries are panicking, and the energy supply is precarious. So my point is, look, I believe we should be doing things about climate CO2, but it's not a simple thing like just stop financing them. So if I can stop financing a good oil company, that isn't going to help. What we need is pipelines, permits. So we can't even get the permits to build solar. We need to get a pipeline to get gas down to Louisiana so they can ship it to help our allies in Europe. So we need very comprehensive policy, and I don't think we have that right yet. I think we're spending too much time just yelling and screaming at each other as opposed to what do we need to accomplish these very important goals of climate, sustainability, and resiliency, and efficient and effective oil price and delivery.
Yeah, but I mean, how do you answer that pressure? You've been among those that they're trying to get you to stop lending. And what's the risk of this expanding into something else? Don't lend to gun manufacturers. Don't lend to conservatives. Don't lend to machine tool companies that make things for drillers. I mean, what's the risk that actually broadens out?
It might. We're getting this now from 20 or 30 states, and it's hard for any business when you have to deal with different rules and regulations in states. And some of the states, may have legitimate complaints about some of the banks, et cetera. Certainly not us. So, we weren't on the Texas list. Kentucky is now asking that we're stopping oil and gas financing when we're the biggest in the world. So I don't know how you can miss that. We just deal with one by one, and I'm not going to get frenetic over it. You call me up, you got a good issue, I'll look at it, we'll respond. We do what's right for our company, our clients, and our country. And so we try to always do the right thing, and obviously we do a great job for a shareholder.
So you're not going to shut down lending to these companies that may not be in the narrative of the Democrat Party?
I'm not going to stop lending to anyone that's in the narrative of any party. We will decide for ourselves what the risk is, whether they want to do it or make sense. And it may not always be that you agree with it or the Republicans agree with it or the Democrats agree with it. That's what a democracy is, by the way. So
I spoke with the former president of the Kansas City Federal Reserve, Thomas Honig, and he was the one holdout. Back in 2010, when they were saying we're throwing stimulus here, throwing stimulus there, he said, no, I'm voting against it. He said it's not just raising interest rates. He said it's the unwind of the balance sheet. You're taking $1 trillion out of liquidity, out of this market, and that's going to cause a market disruption. Do you agree?
Probably, yeah. I don't always agree with him, but one is raising rates. That's one thing. The other is taking out, it sounds like to be $2 or $3 trillion of basically cash out of the system as they sell securities. And at one point, that may cause a little volatility in the markets and stuff like that. And the Fed will have to deal with it when they get there. And part of it's rules and regulations, part of it's the money, part of it's the fiscal stimulus. It's kind of a complex type of thing, but I do expect at one point that'll cause a problem. The issue here is I don't think when that problem happens that they can permanently stop QT. I think they'll have to continue QT because if they don't, there'll be too much liquidity in the system.
So you're not expecting a pivot then? I mean, some people are talking about cutting rates sometime later on this year.
No, I think rates will relate to inflation. QT will relate to volatility and liquidity and call it treasury markets or swap markets, something like that. I think they're going to have to be willing to take a lot of that. I think they have to do QT. I don't think they're going to pivot. I think if something happens like what happened in Europe, in the UK, that they may pause it for a while. They may reverse it very temporarily, but they do have to remove some of that liquidity.